people, as they scale, create their own prison. Like they're inside the box, reinforcing the walls around themselves.
They don't even know who they are or what they want and what they need. All of their needs and their relevance, which is unfortunate, lies in this business. Your clients can be happy and getting results, and you can be miserable, and that is not okay.
Yeah.
Does your offer just feel like it's suffocating you? Leaders get bored and they equate boredom to broken. And just because you're bored doesn't mean that the business is broken. For you to scale the way that you did it, it's like, more money, more clients, but more stress. The most important person you're going to lead today is going to be you. The most important person you're going to influence today is going to be you. With your actions, with your thoughts, with the way in which you move. It's all about you.
Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. I am very excited for today's episode because we are joined by an absolutely incredible guest, Tomasha. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tomasha. Tomasha is a strategic leadership coach and works in business operations and is a consultant dedicated to helping women build profitable, sustainable businesses without sacrificing their personal well-being. She specializes in leadership development, operational strategy, guiding clients to achieve consistent results while maintaining balance within their lives. She has a background in healthcare and entrepreneurship, and she brings a unique perspective to her coaching because she emphasizes the importance of aligning business growth with personal values and lifestyle. This episode, I will say, we covered a lot of ground, okay? I just need to highlight to you some of the incredible things that you're going to be listening to in the next hour listening to this episode. We talked about what leadership really looks like beyond the traditional way we see it of delegation and team management. We talk about why CEOs struggle to let go even though they've built a strong team or have strong team members that they could delegate to. We talk about the hidden emotional challenges of scaling a successful, growing, and expanding business. We talk about how boredom actually shows up in business and what it might actually be telling you about what it means and also what you need to do. We talk about the difference between vision, mission, values, and why most people in this bucket are missing the mark. What happens when your values actually live more in a Google Doc than they actually do within your company. How entrepreneurs unintentionally create a business that they want to escape, the overlooked consequences of building a business without personal alignment, and why so many leaders feel isolated even in the peak of some of their success. So, as I said, we touched on so much and we covered so much ground. So, I cannot wait for you to dive in. So, without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, you guys, welcome back to Ambitious. We're so excited to dive in today. We were just vibing out before we press record, and I feel like today is going to be like a good unfiltered one. I have continuously religiously consumed her lives, and I'm obsessed with hearing her talk. So I was so excited to see her name on the calendar to come on the podcast today. So Tomasha, welcome to Ambitious.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm glad that you consume my lives. It was a good time on there.
Oh, I love it. And the thing that I love is anyone who just has like an unfiltered like channeling of the thing that they talk about all day, every day. So if someone listening maybe hasn't consumed as much of your stuff or maybe is not as familiar with like your work, give us like a quick snapshot of kind of the 101 of the type of work that you do with people.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Tomasha. And if you have not encountered me, you should. I'm a coach that you need to know. I am a lover of all things strategy, structure, leadership, sales. And honestly, my clients, they call me when they're done overthinking, they're ready to make decisions and actually move the needle in their business. And that's the type of coach that I am. I have a sharp eye for strategy, no fluff approach, and I really enjoy helping high achieving women really cut through the noise of life and business and get clear on what really matters and start creating momentum.
Yeah, I love it. See you guys? Cutthroat. I love it. Cutthroat strategy is like exactly my flavor. Okay. So we were just talking before we press record and we were talking about, there's all these terms, right? Of like leadership and team and delegate and all of these things. And obviously both of us work with a lot of scaling women in business. And so I think there's definitely a lot to unpack around that because I think even the idea of leadership feels for many people so gray. Like so many of us know delegation. We think about like SOPs and we think about processes and it feels so structured. But I think there's this aspect around leadership, which is like, what does leadership even mean? Like in the sense of, is it an embodiment? Is it something we integrate in the business? Is it both? So like for you, when you think about leadership and the type of work that you do, what does that look like for you with the businesses you work with?
Yeah, so leadership for me looks like clarity. And it looks like not just leading a team, but really leading yourself, your business and your decisions with not just clarity and confidence, but also conviction. And that last piece is typically missing because it's like, yeah, it's not about doing more. It's not about being everywhere at one time. It's about doing what actually matters, being clear on what matters, and positioning yourself for long-term success, not just like something quick, without sacrificing yourself, right? Without losing the presence that you have in your life, without losing the position that you have in your business. Good leadership to me is well-rounded.
I love that idea of like in you, because I think one of the things that most people ignore is the fact that even if you have a team or even if you're going to leave clients, it's the whole idea of what's caught versus what's taught. And I
Mm,
think, in my opinion, at least with a lot of businesses that I work with, there's so many people ready to preach all the time. But then there's also this aspect of like, hey, super quick, let's pull up the mirror and see if you embody these aspects. And so I think, like, for example, I have entrepreneurs who come to me like, I just want my team to like, really be heart centered. I'm like, but you're not heart centered in the way
yeah,
you do
yeah.
business. Or I want my team to be really, this specific way. But then when they check themselves, or when I gently check them in that area, there's this lack of embodiment. And so I'm curious, like, for you, what you see with clients. Cause at least for me, I feel like what ends up happening when people think about leadership, they think of this oftentimes as a misconception, this like top down idea.
Mm,
And, one of the best quotes that I heard was like, the every business, the leader is like the lid of the business. So like the
yeah.
business will never outgrow its leader. But the thing with that quote that I think is interesting is like, I think you being the cap means that you hold the space, but it also doesn't mean it has to be this idea of like top down. It's kind of you embodying it with your team as well. So I'm curious for you, like when you work with people on that embodiment, what do you see?
I often see people being inside the jar, right? And so when I
Mm,
think about business, I think about a jar. And this is how I explain it to clients. Is like a good leader is someone who knows how to be in the jar, but also be outside of the jar, right? And you
mm,
really should start figuring out how do you spend at least 50% or more of your time outside of the jar, outside of the day to day of what's going on, outside of just sitting in the work and looking at the work and planning for what's coming after this work and this step. And so I often see people over glorifying the grind, right? And like really loving being the busiest person in the room. And it's so
yeah.
interesting because like you build this team and you're
Oh,
still like,
yeah.
I just got so much going on. I got this and
Yeah.
I got that. And they're like, that's what's fueling them and that's what's exciting them. And I'm like, but there's so much more if you would just let it go.
Mm.
There's so much more.
Well, I feel like when we first get in business, and I talk to people about this all the time when it comes to team or leadership, when we get into business, we're kind of like a firefighter. Like we just love getting in there and putting out the fires and being in the problems. And we get this kind of like indirect dopamine hit when we have an issue. And we're like, boom, solved, boom, solved. And like we're just killing it in crushing all these problems. The issue is then when you go to delegate, if you don't, in my opinion, create like a new identity, a new, like, this is where I fit, or this is how I'm impactful in the business. I've literally had conversations with people who are the CEO and the leader of a $200,000 a month business. And they're like, Kate, I work with their teams. And they're like, he won't get out of my emails. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And like, he's trying to get in there and manage the inbox of the email when he hired me to do that. And so when we start to unravel it, what we've recognized is like, it's not because he wants to answer the email. He's not like eager to dive into emails. He doesn't know what to do with the space
Mm,
that has been created because that identity hasn't been shaped yet. So because of that,
yeah,
the only identity that he knows that's like in his core and in his being is to be in the weeds. So I think there's also this aspect when people delegate and kind of not really truly delegating it entirely is
yeah,
also, maybe there's some people who don't trust the team. I've had that before. But I
yeah,
think there's also this aspect of they don't know what to do with themselves if they're not in those weeds and having that dopamine hit and putting those fires out.
yeah. And to take it a step further is they don't trust themselves.
Mhm.
Right? It's just one thing to build something that you're a part of, that you're like literally in the seat doing it all the time. Like you built that. I created
Mhm.
that. I wrote that script. I created that program. I was teaching all those people with all those results and where they came from. Versus when you say, I'm pulled out of it. You got to trust that what you've built can stand without you. And I think that that is a whole new level to
Mm.
trust that the things that you have been doing for years and the seed that you've been sowing that it can produce without you literally being there. So many people, I think, especially leaders in entrepreneurship, they consider themselves to be the seed versus being the ground, right? Like
Mm.
for a long time, you are the seed. You're the thing that like you're planting yourself in this business and you're doing all of the work and you're the thing that's supposed to produce. And
Yeah.
when you become a leader, now you're ground. You're the roots. You don't really have to do anything, right? But nourish the rest of the plant. And that is a very boring place to be. Because, because if you think about it, you
Yeah.
rarely see the root.
Yeah.
You just see the trees and the fruit. And that's the difficulty.
And I wonder though if people have that as a conscious awareness.
I doubt
Because
it. I've never seen
yeah, I was gonna say, as soon as you said that, my thought goes to potentially this being the reason that people pivot, because in my opinion, and I'm sure you see this, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this, but
yeah.
I see so many people build teams and then collapse the team. And it's interesting because there's so many layers to it, right? Like, obviously, there's the consideration of all the people that were involved and who are now not involved. Like, we see so many people pivoting.
Yeah.
And as you said that, my first inclination goes to like lack of acknowledgement and awareness of that being the case of what your role is going to be could
Yeah.
very well be the seed of why people are needing to make those pivots potentially 2, 3, 5 years down the road, because now they have this awareness, okay, great, I'm not the center of everything. Am I okay with that? And
Yeah.
does that mean that I have the business that I want?
Mm. You know what I hear when you say that really is this idea of boredom, right? And
Mhm.
especially in our space, I find that more leaders get bored and they equate boredom to broken. And just because you're
Mm.
bored doesn't mean that the business is broken. It just means,
So
right,
good.
that maybe you have built something so good. Maybe you have done such a great job that, like, yeah, the sales team can do things without you. And yeah, your admin people, they can take care of the business and deal with any discrepancies or, challenges with clients on their own. And the
Mm.
program is doing well and clients don't need you as much. And there's this like internal desire to be needed. We all want that, whether we want to say it or not. And so when business owners tell me that they're getting bored, which I hear a lot from women, I feel bored in my business. There is this like semblance in their brain that, oh, this
Yeah.
must be broken if I'm bored. And it's like, no, maybe you did a really good thing. And now that you feel bored, it's time for you to make a bold decision,
Mm.
right? And figure out how is it that you can get rid of that boredom and just do something more bold. It's one of the reasons why I recommend for all of my clients when they do have the bigger teams or they are running the bigger businesses is to find a role in the business that fulfills you.
Mhm.
Especially if you are actually a CEO, right? Like, you're not
Mhm.
just an owner, someone who just kinda pops in, see how things are going, X, Y, and Z. If you really
Yeah.
are a CEO,
Yeah.
find a role that works for you and hold on to that. You may be the salesperson, you really enjoy that. You still wanna do the calls and you still wanna deal with people
Mhm.
in the DMs or whatever that is. Do that. Find a role and you will kind of, like, be able to overcome the boredom that I think really leads people to burning down and actually breaking their own businesses a lot.
I was just gonna say, I think that the boredom, it's kinda like when people who haven't been exposed to silence experience silence and they start to go crazy and they're kind of like, "I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. I'm
Mhm.
dysregulated." I think that happens in business, and I think to your point, people experience that and then they go and they break something so they have something to do.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes to the point, which is the hard part, I'm sure for you and something that I experience, obviously for me, the tough part is seeing the collateral damage that happens. The
Yeah.
collateral damage of people who really maybe didn't have an understanding of the vision of the business other than, to be just totally transparent and direct, finances. Like, it's like, I want to hit X number of money and I don't care how I do it. I see this collateral damage because people's vision is completely rooted in revenue. And then
Mhm.
because they have no other bumper lanes, it's just like, in any way, shape, or form, let's do it. And it always happens. And I preface it with every person that comes into like my virtual office. I'm like, when you
Yeah.
get here, I'm going to tell you what the process is going to look like. And I'm telling you the potential of what could happen when you arrive because I've seen it 15 times over. You're
Yeah.
gonna be so excited to hit, say, 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, whatever the number is, because that's your vision. You're gonna build all this structure, and if you're not careful along the way, you're gonna get there and you're gonna hate it.
Mm.
And then you're gonna break it to the ground. And I was like, it's much better if we can to try to build it from a place of intention and like
Mhm.
rooted in values and all of those pieces. And I'm curious for you, like when you've seen obviously and you have exposure to people who've quote unquote broken their business, what do you see as kind of like, I guess, symptoms or like signs that maybe someone kind of does lack that tuning in with their business that they might need to have to be successful long term?
I often find that when I ask them, I always ask this one question, right? So I always ask people like, tell me about your dream life. And I'll just ask that question. It's very vague, right? There's nothing
Mhm.
really specific there. And I listen to what their answers are, or I read it in a form, and everything's about the business, right? They don't mention much about their personal lives. It's just everything like, I
Mm.
want to do this, I want to hit this, I want to have this, I want to do this, I want to have this many people. And then I'll turn around and I'll say, okay, so then tell me about how this will affect you as a person.
Mhm.
And they're very slow to answer. And so I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, right, especially, is if you find that you're very fast and quick to respond to all of your business goals and desires and wants. And when I ask you about yourself or your life, it's real slow. And it's almost like you're confused. That immediately lets me know that this person is
Mm.
so deep into this business that they don't even know who they are, more than likely, or what they want and what they need. All of their needs and their relevance, which is unfortunate, lies in this business.
Mm. It's a scary place to be because as the business then roller coasters as they do, you roller coaster along with it. So I'm thinking for that question, someone's listening to that and they think, okay, well, I have a vision for my business, but I feel like I have no vision for my life
Mm,
in connection with that. So again, like I think a lot of people that come to me when I ask,
yeah,
what's the goal or what do you see for yourself? Same thing. 7 figures, 4 or 5 team members, maybe 2 signature offers, low ticket, high ticket,
yeah.
like, it's like but, like, it's crystal clear of, like,
Crystal,
what
yeah,
they could see, and then I was like, "Okay, like, how many hours a week do you wanna work?" Or, like, "What do you prioritize outside of work that's really important to you that we wanna make sure you have space for?" Like, what
yeah.
are those things? And again, to your point, they end up being very slow, so I'm curious if someone feels like they have, like, the business number clarity or, like,
Yeah.
hypothetical structure clarity, but they don't have that congruency between that and their life. Where do you usually start with clients to kinda help people to unpack that or create some synergy between it?
Mm. I typically start with what's going okay that they could see being better.
Mm,
Oftentimes we kind of lean to like, especially when people come to us, it's like, well, what are the challenges? What's not going well? And
yeah.
I typically start, especially because I work primarily with women, is what's going good that you would like more of? Right? Like,
Mm,
do you feel like you're not making it to all of your kids' soccer games, maybe only making it to one a month? Do you
mm,
find that, like, you would love to be able to read them, bedtime stories? Are you not getting in all of your workouts at the start of the day? And you're like, "Well, what's going on?" Like, what do you prefer to read and you haven't read in 6 months?
yeah.
Just a regular romance novel, right? Or
Yeah,
like, you
yeah.
like to, like, Netflix and chill? And so I start asking them, like, what are some of the areas where you desire better, you want more, you
Mm,
find yourself when you do get in those little pockets of peace or those pockets of joy, you're like, oh, I wish this didn't have to end. Right? Like, I find women saying, like, when I do go on vacation, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I could just always have a few more days. Well, what if we got you to the place to where when you went on vacation, you didn't have that feeling anymore because
mm,
you were vacationing and taking off time so frequently?
consistently. Yeah.
And so we don't always recognize, I think, like, in me asking that question, I start there because sometimes you don't recognize how much more you desire in those areas that are okay. They're just good
Mm.
enough. Let's make it great. Let's make it excellent.
And the fact that we're creating it.
Mhm.
That's what's mind-boggling to me is, like, for so
Yeah.
many people to be entrepreneurs and, like, this innovator of the life that they want, the business that they want, what I see time and time again, which is sad, is that people, as they scale, create their own prison. Like, they're inside the box, reinforcing the walls around themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just because of a lack of awareness of the fact of what the decisions are that they're making and then the
Yeah.
consequences of those. And I
Yeah.
think, the thing for me around vision, which was a huge eye-opening thing, I used to have vision as, like, metrics and milestones, which
Mm.
was a massive problem because it meant that I was never happy, and
Yeah.
it also wasn't really helpful in having a team because truthfully, when I first started, it was all about, like, "Hey, hit 7 figures." That was, like, I was gunning for that goal.
Yeah.
Of course, got there, super caffeinated, dry shampoo in my hair, miserable, haven't take I was that girl. I had not taken a vacation, let alone gone and wanted more. I hadn't gone at all. And so I remember kind of having that pivotal moment then and being like, okay, well, this ain't it. Cause I was like, if this is seven figures, I don't want it. And so I
Mm,
kind of started to reevaluate. And so I thought, don't make it about the number, make it about the structure. So, like, make it about the offers or make it about the marketing or whatever it might be of things I wanted to see happen or come to fruition that weren't connected to a specific number.
yeah.
But that also was hard because in business, so many things change so fast. If the market
Yeah.
changes, you might adjust. I would say, I want to really sell this offer. And then we had like triple the demand for one on one. And I thought, what the heck is this? This doesn't go with the vision, right? This doesn't
Yeah,
fit in the
yeah,
bucket.
yeah.
And I think when I did actually an intensive for coaching for myself and for our team, one of the things that came up was this kind of constant feeling of failure because it was a marker. It wasn't a matter of this kind of like overall pathway we were going down that had two bumper lanes that generally speaking were in the right area. And
Mm,
so I think starting to build the vision off of a mission that we had and a impact that we wanted to create and also values around what we cared about helped us to feel less shame in not going a certain path or fitting a
yeah,
certain bucket, and
yeah,
also helped our team to feel really empowered to know that like if it changes around this offer, this marketing, we don't kind of judge ourselves. We just overall are trying to head in this direction. And I'm curious for you, like what you with the teams that you work with or for yourself even, what do
yeah.
you think when it comes to like vision, say, versus like mission and those sorts of things when it helps to guide the vision of the company?
Ooh. When I think about vision versus mission, I always really just look at the intention behind what it is that we see. Oftentimes, like our mission is like, well, I want to impact a bunch of people, right? And I want to,
Mm,
help women to change their lives. But when I think vision, I think that it includes both the founder and the people impacted,
mm,
right? Vision is something that is, again, it's the whole perspective and impact. And so, when you think about vision, I'm always pushing clients and women to think from the place of not just what impact are you going to provide to people, but how is that going to be able to impact you as well? Because I think we focus so much in like especially in our mission, it's all about other people, but our vision
mm,
includes us, and so we have to intentionally think like I actually get to decide how I'm going to be impacted by this. How is this
mm.
going to also help me? Yes, I'm helping clients make six and multiple six and multiple seven figures, but
Yeah.
how is that going to impact me as a human being? How is that freeing me for more
What
beyond
are some
making the money?
examples of what you've seen, like in the sense of
Mm,
examples of what that might look like when people start to define that distinction between like vision for the team versus vision for themselves or the mission for the team versus
mm.
themselves?
Yeah, so I've seen like one client, she had a great business came to me, almost around seven figures at this point. And, her goal was to be able to, obviously, she wanted to be able to impact more people, but in a
Right.
deeper way. And so she was having challenges with like so much one to one and things like that. And I started asking her, I said, well, what is it doing for you? And so one of the
Mm,
things that she wanted was to have, a marriage where she felt like she was more present there with her husband, right? So they had
mm.
kids and there was a lot going on constantly back and forth. And so for
Yeah.
her, it looked like, yes, while I am sometimes traveling and I'm seeing clients and I'm serving, I also want to be seen and I also want to enjoy life as a married person.
Mm,
Right. And so
mhm.
for her, that looks like her being present with her husband, and actually going out on regular dates and, like spending quality time on the weekend with him versus like being inside the program or doing client feedback reviews.
Yeah.
And that gave her energy in life. So that's like a small example of something that she wanted to do to have more time. She wanted to speak more instead of coach all the time. Right.
Yeah.
She enjoys in person things. She reminded me a lot of myself. She enjoys in person things. And so
Same.
she wanted to do more in person experiences and kind of get off of the Zoom. For her, that we really were able to get to like, what do you see? How do you see yourself playing a part in all of this
Mm.
amazing transformation that you're causing for other people? So, short answer is mission is a transformation for people, vision is a holistic transformation for you and your people.
And I so want to echo something that you just said because I think it's basically on every single business owner's vision board, which is
Yeah.
impact. And it's this such general word because I
Mm,
think the idea of impact in what way? Like, I think what you just did there, which I really want to highlight for everybody, is you're giving impact texture. Like you're being able to really pull it apart and say, okay, but if you're creating impact, what does that look like? And I remember for me, when was growing and kind of starting, I was like, I'm going to help everybody. I'm just going to be like this like massive giver in this
Yeah.
space and just impact everybody that I touch.
Yeah.
But obviously, like many people, I got completely at capacity and couldn't do it. And I felt stretched a million different directions. And I was like, I feel like this is not helping anybody because I've got nothing left to give. And I was trying to help beginners and mid tier and scaling and teams and all of the things. And I remember a coach coming to me and I said, yeah, but like, I don't want to not help beginners because if I don't help beginners, like I'm not gonna be able to impact them. And I remember him asking me like a very simple question, but it was always to this day something that I've kind of kept in my heart as like the compass of decisions, which came from the impact you're looking to make. Who says that it has to be financial? And I
Girl.
was like, ooh, oopsie, let me journal on that one. So I
Yeah.
remember sitting there and it just like hit me like a ton of bricks because I was thinking about this offer and this course and this whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, you realize that people are impacted every day by brands and they never spend a penny. You consume their TikTok, you listen to their podcast, you
Yeah.
watch their YouTube. And
Mhm.
he's like, what if you could look at keeping the offers you love, like keep the mastermind, keep the one-on-one, keep the in-person stuff if you like it,
Yeah.
but what would it look like if you impacted people and it wasn't connected to any investment at all? And when I got that permission slip to again give texture to like impact for me meant I don't want an offer around it. I just want to pour into you and you can get it
Yeah.
accessed anywhere. It allowed this new level of like permission in the business to do it quote unquote my way, but
Mhm.
still hit that impact bucket. And so I think like obviously, I'm sure you see the word, it's all like it's so funny because not very original. Our programs are called Impact Income, ITI. But,
Yeah.
it was something I created back in the day. I could have done better with that label or that title, but we'll move on from there. But I basically was someone who really wanted to make sure I worked with people who focused on impact. But I'm curious for you, when you see that word impact and you see that come up with clients or even with people that you're helping to kind of create this vision for their business, what do you see in the sense of the categories or the texture of how you kind of look at impact?
Mm. When I think about impact, and I say this say this a lot, but I think about like acting accordingly, right? Impact
Mm,
is about how is it that you actually want to be living, breathing, seen, adorned, viewed. Oftentimes, I think that we are moving in a way that we think people want us to move versus how
mm,
we want to move. And so, impacting is leading by example. It is about shifting your mind and not just changing the strategy, right? It's
mm,
about creating long lasting change and even being willing to shift or challenge the norm. That's impact to me, right? And so when I think about the way that I impact, right? Like I from the beginning wanted to help women move differently in their businesses and lives. I wanted women to see that you get to challenge the norm of what people say business leadership should look like, but
mm,
especially for a woman. You
mm,
get to say that I'm going to have this incredible, glorious business, and I'm also going to have a very joyful life, and they're going to be in tandem. It's not going to be just when I go on vacation or, just when I get time off. It's going to be every day.
mm.
And that's what impact is for me. It is not just saying I'm going to impact your revenue, I'm going to
Yeah.
also impact the reinvention of who you are and what
Mm,
it is that you do and how you move through it. Because a lot of us are really good at what we do. The challenge is how we do it and how we impact people because that
mm.
then affects how we live our lives.
Well, and I'm curious because obviously many of us who've been in business for years like have to repeat our mission 15 times a
Yeah.
day to
Yeah.
team members, clients, content, whatever.
Yeah.
You obviously summarize that so distinctly. And I'm thinking someone listening to this is probably like, I don't have that distinct of a mission for my business. How did you get there to make that feel like number one, that was your mission? And number two, to make it something so distinct to communicate? Because I think a lot of people are like, yeah, like I want to help people to like have more freedom and do this. And it's kind of gray. There's
Yeah.
not like a really like when you stand with us, this is what you stand for.
Mm,
How did you find, or is there anything that you found helpful that were tools to help you really create a easily definable mission, number one, and
yeah.
two, memorable? Like, as you said that, I'm like, that's really memorable. And I think
Yeah.
that's important. Like, obviously, that's in a brand bucket and marketing and all of that. But I think it's really important because when you speak to that, and I just want to kind of like break the fourth wall here, when she speaks to that on a podcast, you're going to remember that statement, which means now you remember Tamasha. So the thing I'm curious about is like how you distill it down. Cause I think for many people, it's a big difficulty. They just think I want to help people make more money or help
Yeah.
them be more free.
Yeah. I mean, this is years in the making, right? Even before I became a business owner. And so I always give that because I think we feel, and let me put this out there, right? Let's just off the cuff. There's this rush to really figure out this cute and curated mission. And I promise you,
Mm,
that's not where it is. I found that my impact was in the results and not the noise. And we create a lot of noise in our heads,
mm,
trying to find the best way to say this and the best way to articulate that. And so, through me doing the work, I had a heart to help women do business differently. It started there, really, just helping real women get real results and be able to live a real life. That's literally
mm,
what I used to say back in the day. And
mhm,
it was generic, right? But through the results that I was getting for women, through me having to navigate their challenges and help them to navigate what they were going to do, the results showed me what my mission was and what I was really doing. And they've
mm,
continued to push me in ways where sometimes I didn't want to be pushed to make
mhm,
challenges and to make changes sometimes I didn't want to make, right? And so I always tell people that the impact that you want to have and the mission that you're going after, it is in the results. I promise you there. What are the women, not what you want to say, not what your
yeah.
cute positioning statement says, not what your
Yeah.
bio says, right?
Yeah.
But what are the women and the people in their reviews and in their conversations with you and in those Voxer
Mhm.
chats and the Slack channels and in those, individual conversations and in the rooms, what are they vocalizing that you've
Yes.
helped change in their life?
Yeah.
I have women tell me that kept them from getting divorced. Women telling me that their
Mm.
kids are now saying, "Mommy, I love that you made it to all of my games. You didn't miss a game this season." Or,
Yeah.
a woman saying like, I feel healthier because I'm walking every day and I'm eating lunch and I'm not skipping it because a client call went longer, or like I'm on vacation and my phone is off and it's off.
Mm.
That is impact. Those are the things that I needed to hear and I needed to see. I wasn't just helping them to create more revenue, I was helping them to create more space. I was helping them to be more joyful. I wouldn't have seen that had I not done the work. And so I think that, number one, the work will work if you allow it to work. But number two, your mission is in the results, not the noise.
And I'm hearing from that, there's 2 things I take from that, which is I think there's an aspect of what we want our impact to be versus
Mhm.
what it inevitably becomes.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're like, "But no, this is what our impact is supposed to be," it's like all your clients are saying something different. So we might wanna lean with listening to the data that's happening in your world. But I
Yeah.
think the other thing that also comes from that for me is, and I very much resonate with it, is the idea that your impact can also find you instead of you finding it.
Oh,
And
so
that's
good.
basically how my quote unquote mission came to be, because I was in a mastermind that had like 3 women in the room and I thought, what is going on? Either women couldn't make it all at the same time, or this program only has like 5 women in it. That's shocking.
Mm,
So I was like, first of all, we need a different room. This is not okay. And it's not even to say that there had to be, female or male rooms, but just like we need more balance. And so that was kind of the initial spark. And then I remember going into the female business coaching consulting space, and I would go into masterminds, or I would go to like look to basically get a mentor, and it was like join our wine night and join like meet your best girlfriends in this program. And I thought like, and I love building my network, and where's the funnels? Like, and where's the strategy? Like, I wanted to still learn the things that you're talking about today. How do I build the vision for my business? How do I build my mission? What are my values?
mhm.
And I found that I couldn't find that anywhere. So I was like, I'm not, negating all of the work that's needed in mindset to help you to have the business you want. But can we get a little bit of like, both together? Like, why do we have to have such extremes? So that made me think, okay, more women in the room paired with more masculine and feminine combination. Interesting. And
Mhm.
then I remember being around trying to look for rooms of people who had been doing 7 figures a year in revenue. And I couldn't find a lot of rooms that, again, were masculine, feminine, who had that amount of women in them.
Yeah.
And so I thought, like, where are they? Like, either they're hiding in their offices working on their laptop, or they don't exist. And so I literally, the nerd that I am, I literally searched how many women on average have a
Mm,
7 figure a year business and revenue. And then I see the stat at the time was like 3% of all female founded businesses. And I thought, you'd be freaking kidding me right now. So I was pissed, obviously
Yeah.
being raised by a single mom and hardcore feminist household. I was pissed because I thought this makes sense. There wasn't women in the room. Women are not maybe getting access to the resources or the strategies or the approaches that they need.
Mm,
And so then it became we want to change the stat. And the way in which we do it is by integrating masculine and feminine and not making women have to choose anymore. And so, like, the mission was not me in a Google Doc because I had, to your point earlier, that doc. I had the doc of, I'm going to make my vision and my mission. And I like went and I sat down and made
yeah.
this BS statement that I never looked at after the day I completed it.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I want to accentuate of what you're saying for people listening is also maybe if you're early in business or you haven't been in business that long, it just maybe hasn't found you yet. Or to your point, the results are not there enough to give you the evidence you need to feel
Right.
clear that, okay, that's it. That's the nugget.
Yeah. No, and because I think a part of the way is, you know, a lot of things in business, it's first proved to you before you can prove it to other people. And we don't love to give room for that process. There is a proving of almost everything before we actually have the solid ability to prove it to other people. You think about the journey in business, your first six figures is about you proving, right, to yourself that this really is even a thing. Like, yes, you have to prove to people that you have something,
Yeah.
to buy and that it's going to get them results, but you're also proving to yourself, like, oh, like this thing actually works,
Yeah.
right?
First couple of months, it's
That's
mainly
the
to your
thing.
parents. After that, yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically you and then a larger audience for
Yeah,
sure.
and then you
Yeah.
start growing beyond that six figures. You get to multiple six or seven figures, and now it's even thicker about like, oh, I got to prove that I can do this X Y Z to myself. And so there's so much about yourself in that, and allowing yourself to know like it's gonna come to me. Like you said, mission will come to you if you start with the heart and with the intention. Let the mission come. Because
Mm,
no matter what, if you got the heart and the intention, you're going to stay in it. And people are going to get the result because you're committed to it. But the mission, it will expose itself. And I feel like that's a much beautiful way than trying to force it.
for sure. For sure. Okay, so obviously that gives us a good clarity on vision, also mission, but I think a big part of it, which I'm sure you do obviously in this work with clients, is the values that are the underbelly of it. And so
Mm.
you kind of nodded to those obviously with some of the clients, but I'm curious for you, where do values fit into this? Because again, I think many business owners, and if you're triggered listening to this, that's a sign to dive deeper. This is an invitation, I think, for people to also look at take this out of the Google Doc. And I think which is why I was so excited for today's conversation, leadership and vision and mission and values, it becomes this HR BS document that we never look at. That's the foundation of the business, but never gets integrated or embodied. And so I really want to kind of, I guess, make contextual for people when you see like determining our business values.
Yeah.
What the heck does that mean in your opinion to you or with clients? And like, how does that integrate into helping these clients that you work with or for yourself? How does it help to shape the business that they really want to happen?
Hmm. Yeah, when I think about like determining values and then looking at it from a business perspective, values are like the foundation of everything that you do. And determining business values really just comes down to like identifying your non-negotiables. To me, that's what a value is. This is something that is not negotiable with me. This is a part of who I am. It's a part of my being, what I do and how we're going to do it, how I run my business, how I make decisions, how I serve my clients. What do we do? So they're not just words on a page. They're your influence, right?
Mm,
They're your brand positioning and your offers. And so when I think about how do I identify, like, what do I not compromise on? How do I identify the boundaries that I set, like that protect my time or my energy? Some of the behaviors and expectations, like what are going to be those deal breakers? And what's the business structure that's going to allow you to thrive rather than just merely be here working and surviving on a day to day? An example of that might be like, I refuse to build a business where like my success is tied to me being exhausted or overworked all the time. To me, that's a value. I think that
mm,
scaling should bring you success, not stress. That's like something I say all
mm,
the time. If you really want to grow, like it shouldn't be about you being more stressed and more worked, right? So small things like that, like I think about respect is a huge part. It's like one of my values I talk to clients about all the time. In order for you to have a business where clients and people respect you, you must first respect yourself. right?
Mhm.
And so your results are going to follow your respect. Do you respect your boundaries?
Yep.
Do you have integrity? Do you respect the leadership and the influence that you have in your space? So that's what like values and leadership looks like to me.
Mm. Okay, so I want to take a quick little brief interruption from today's episode to let you know about something really exciting. And I want to first preface there is nothing here that I have to sell you. This is about something that is entirely free that I think would be a massive support for you if you are someone who's loving all things ambitious podcast. So, we have created an absolutely incredible community that is called the Ambitious Network. This is really a place where coaching and masterminds meet high level networking of other women who are just like you. So, a little bit of what you can anticipate this is a place for you to grow, to connect, and ultimately to get the support that you need to elevate your business. And so, some of the things you can anticipate inside number one, live hot seat coaching. This is literally live coaching in the way that I would do inside of our masterminds and our different offers, only inside of this community, entirely free. You'll also get the opportunity to get access to exclusive giveaways that are not available anywhere else. So, these are things like giveaways of different books and resources that I'm obsessed with that have really helped me in my journey of business, but also things on a larger scale, like some of which have been 6 months of private coaching type of giveaways. So, all of this to be said, massive, massive amount of resources being given inside, and also trainings and resources, tools of frameworks and downloads and worksheets and masterclasses that are going to be things that will really help to take you and your business to the next level. Now, it's also not just about me. I have an incredible network and a community of other entrepreneurs who also want to give back to you if you've loved their interviews and their discussions on the Ambitious podcast. So we have guests that are also providing resources in the community that will only be available inside the Ambitious Network. But there's also the networking aspect. And this is a place for you to not only connect with other women about what's going on in your business, what's currently working or not working in today's current market. It's a place to share wins, but it's also a place to connect with me and get my feedback and support for you and your business. Now, all of that to be said, this is as I said, mastermind meets networking. And I really have created this as a community that I want to be something you've never gotten anywhere else. It's not this low ticket membership that you feel like you're paying for, this graveyard of resources that the person has, they don't know what to do with. And it's also not that Facebook group that you're inside of that you feel like you get tons of notifications, but you don't really want anything that's inside of it. It all feels surface level. We want to give you the ability to have mastermind meets high level networking all in one place. And the Ambitious Network is where you're going to find that. So, how you can get inside. If you want to go to the show notes beneath, you can click a link to join us inside the Ambitious Network. And if you also want to connect with me on Instagram, I'm also happy to chat with you about it. So, if you DM me the word ambitious, we'll be sure to chat a little bit more about the network for you and give you the link to get inside. So, all of that to be said, I don't want to take any more time away from today's episode. So, without further ado, let's get back into the show. I think for us, I very much agree in the sense of like really using them as the compass. I almost think about it. And again, this is not to say as you're listening to this that you have to be religious or faith based in any way,
Mm,
but it's kind of similar in the essence or the principle of it to commandments. Like commandments don't give you, in this situation with your neighbor, act accordingly in this way. It's basically saying, in
yeah,
general, with human beings, we care about them by following these principles.
yeah,
And so I think about commandments in religion or in faith in a similar way that I do to values in business because I think they're the bumper lanes. They teach us a way of operating, a principle to live by. And I think for me, I've realized that it's made a lot by understanding what our values were. We were able to make decisions quicker and easier because it wasn't about the decision. It was just about cross referencing it with does this align with our values? Like, does this
yeah,
align with what we say we want to do?
yeah,
And so I think, especially because obviously both of us are kind of strategy nerds, when people get overwhelmed with strategy, I think, should I have, let's just say, should I do a course or should I do one on one? Should I do in person?
mm,
One of our values is it's all about depth, not width. Meaning,
mm,
like for me, you're not going to, and again, there's no shade to this. It's just for my business specifically. I'm never going to be like the passive queen. Like you're never going to see that side to I'm just not that person. Like I like to get
yeah,
behind the curtain of people's businesses, pull all the pieces apart and put it back together. Like that's what I just nerd out on with myself and my team.
yeah,
So the idea for us, we have looked at it 15 times over and we're just like, it's just not who we are. It's just not
yeah,
the way that we can operate. And what we did, because we found that, kind of to your point around values and sometimes them not being always like easily integrated,
yeah,
is we ended up switching ours actually this past year into phrases. And one of them, how it came to be was I went to an intensive of a client in person and they had all their values on the wall. And I pulled one of the team members aside and said, "Hey, do you guys live by those?" And they were like, "No." I'm like, "Okay. Can people riff them off? Like, do you guys know what they are, like off the top of your head?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay." So they just sit in the frame. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Cool."
Wow.
So we're gonna work on that. So then what I realized was the words were not being embodied, but they also weren't memorable. And so I thought,
Mm,
one of the things we know in brand is like statements and even scripture, anything that basically can be easily memorized and also has emotion connected to it will naturally be remembered. And so we're like, what if we turned our values into statements or phrases? And so what we ended up doing when we thought about, okay, like we really push people to get uncomfortable. So like anything that you don't want to do, we're going to ask you to go head on first into it. So one of our quotes in our business as a core value is be the bison, which is basically like when it starts to rain and it storms, every other type of animal runs in the opposite direction of the storm. The bison run through it in the effort to try to get through it as fast as possible. So
yeah.
our quote basically goes back to be the bison. So in a moment where a team member is like, I don't want to do it, this is uncomfortable for me, this is like, I'm scared of it, I'm nervous about it, we're like, hey, be the bison. And you're like, ugh. And it's like, you kind of like 3, 2, 1, go. But I found that when you can also make them fun, you make them team created, you also make them revised as the business grows. Like the values, again, I had in that Google Doc are not what I have today. I think my biggest advice for anyone listening is to your point, even with all the ones that you've mentioned, looking at how is it integrated in the business and also maybe checking yourself to see if you're living by it because otherwise it does end up in that HR doc before you know it.
Oh gosh, the HR doc, I feel like that is the best explanation thing that I've heard today, to be honest with you, because that's exactly what it is, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that you brought up the part phrases too, because like that's pretty much how I do them. Like I don't have like a
Cool.
really cute, here's here are my value statements X, Y, and Z. It's like there
Yeah.
are certain things that I say all the time between my content with clients. Like people
Yeah.
have heard me say act accordingly for a long time. That's a value. It's not just something I'm saying to be cute
Mhm.
or to like get recognition. It's like no, make decisions from your future self. That's what that
Mm.
means, right? And so I think when you just kind of piggybacking on what you were saying, when you give your values in a phrase or a statement, not only does it allow your team and for people to catch on to it, I think that it really allows you to embody it even more, right? It
Mm.
becomes a part of you and what you're doing and how you're leading people. Because we all have a level of influence, in our respective industries and with our clients, but the most important person for you to influence is yourself
Mhm.
every single day. Right. And so for me, it's always important. I tell clients like the most important person you're going to lead today is going to be you. The most important person you're going to influence today is going to be you with your actions, with your thoughts, with the way in which you move. It's all about you. So I love that part about just like the values being in phrases because
Mm.
that's typically how we speak and how we think. It
Yeah.
affects our faith and our belief, not religious, just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember a quote to a song that I don't even wanna remember, but I happen to. Like, "Call Me Maybe." Why do I know all the lyrics? Don't know. Like, it just is something you remember. So, it also makes it integratable for people when it has emotion connected to it as well. Now, I'm thinking as we've gone through this, right? We have the vision, we've got mission, we've got values.
Mm,
I also know, as I know you know, which is I can't wait to hear this side, is what it means to not have this. Because both of us experience as she takes a deep breath, both of us experience what so many businesses that come to us saying, "I hate my business. I, wanna burn it to the ground potentially," or the quote unquote, "I wanna pivot." Um, and oftentimes, like, kinda like, I just wanna highlight what we were just saying with the values. If you don't have the values, you don't have the compass from which to make decisions, which then means you lead into decisions that you maybe shouldn't have been making, which ultimately lead to compound over time, sometimes 2 to 5 years
yeah.
before you have this aha moment, "Oh, it's not right for me." So I'm curious if you could share, like, for you, what do you see when people don't have these things established?
Mm.
And if they haven't prioritized getting clarity on the vision, the mission, the values, and maybe even for themselves or to communicate it or integrate it with the team, what do you see transpires within businesses and like what kind of ends up at your desk, if you will, when people don't have those integrated?
Yeah, I call it chaos under the carpet. It's like
Mm.
You know, it's this nice carpet, like just imagine you walk into a nice living space and it's there and it's beautiful. It's like the star of the room. And you just don't know if you lift that bad boy up, there's a lot of chaos and trash and dirt things swept under it. And that's what I see often. And to contextualize that, it's typically we cause chaos in our finances. We start spending on things that don't make any sense, or we're over
Mm,
outsourcing and we're over investing
yeah.
into things, trying to, patch or cover something up. And I start to see this withdrawal from the business. All of a sudden now, all of the offers are about, it's either very high ticket or nothing. And then you start to almost, I hear them even start to diminish their audiences. Well, my audience doesn't want to do this and my audience isn't ready for that. And it's like, no, are you not ready for this? Like, are you not listening? And so there's
Yeah.
there's this financial chaos, there is like leadership chaos. And I would also say too, it starts to turn into, it also manifests in their relationships. This is probably one of the biggest ones that I didn't really expect to talk about today, but I will see women that I've known or even sometimes looked up to, and they end up, on the Zoom with me. And these are people I know that have really great circles, relationships, that well known in their
Mhm.
industries, and all of a sudden they're like on this island alone. Well, I don't have this friend anymore, and I'm not connected to these people, and all of a sudden they're
Oh,
siloed.
yeah.
And to
Yeah.
me,
100%.
that is probably one of the fastest ways to identify if you are on your way to
Mm,
being in like a chaotic situation. When you start losing friends for nothing, when you start
mhm.
siloing and putting yourself into these you want to say it's intimate, but it's really alone, lonely spots and places, it's a sign of chaos to come.
That's a sucker punch right there. Are you really having intimate time and getting some solo time to pour in, or are you just alone? It's true. It's a valid piece. I've seen people who've come to me, man, I'm just thinking about everything you just listed and how many people come to mind with those symptoms who've come to me. Um, the blaming of the audience, my audience is the problem. I 1000% agree with. And I think this aspect of the isolation is often under the cloak of the fact that it's like productive, or I'm in like a hustle season, or like things like that that kind of allow it to be glamorized. I love the analogy of the chaos under the carpet because it's such an accurate representation of the fact of how it looks on the outside to most people versus what's really going on underneath the hood.
Yeah, and I want to take a quick second that if you resonate with the chaos under the carpet, I don't want you to feel bad. I just want you to be aware that that
Mhm.
is not a place that you need to sit in, and nothing good is going to come from that. And right now, you have made yourself believe that this is the only way. Right? For some
Mhm.
reason, when you get into those spaces, when you don't have the values and you don't really have a clear mission, and sometimes you just really don't even have any more hope or joy,
Mm.
you'll become committed to this silent loneliness in business. Like, this is the only way I'm going to do it. And
Mm.
I want you to know that in those seasons, your relationships matter more than anything else. You can be broke, but with a relationship, turn rich overnight.
Mhm.
Rich in money, rich in comfort, rich in, like someone giving you love or just showing you grace. That's what I mean when I say going from broke to rich overnight. And so when I start to see women lose their relationships, we often think about the revenue going down. But babes, if all of a sudden you feel alone when you just had a bunch of people, core relationships,
Mm.
there's something there. And I don't
And
want
I
you to
guess
sit there.
is it worth it?
Mm, never.
Like, if you picture having a seven-figure business, but you're completely alone in your home and you speak to nobody, is that really, to your point of vision, is that really the vision? Like, that's what
Mm,
we're doing, that's what we're building toward?
yeah.
And I think, it's a slippery slope because I think that there's moments in business when we don't have those established
Yeah.
that we kinda let the outside environment determine the action. So,
Mm,
like, to your point of, kind of ending up with friends going, like, I think in those moments, there was, obviously the season of like, it's all about volume, the amount of content you can get out. And people are like, post 5 TikToks a day. And you're like, okay. And that's just going to take half my day. No big deal. So they go into doing that. And then you end up, for example, spending tons of time on marketing. And you're like, I can't go to that dinner. I got to film. I can't go to this commitment. I got to film. And while you think like this is what I need to do, like this is sacrifice, and we're told all of these things around hustle culture, like this is the way, and they don't want it as bad as you, and you don't want to be like everybody else. There's so many deep ingrained narratives that
Mm,
can become the guiding compass if you don't have your own. And so then you start to kind of follow those, and at least this is what happened to me. I looked up and I thought, "What happened?" Because it felt like
mm,
I was like head in the sand, almost like I blacked out or something. It was just I was so deep in it, and there were so many micro decisions not rooted in the time and any values that I just was like, "Okay, like next action, next action." But before you know it, the compound of how much has to be unraveled is
yeah.
so significant that when most people build their business without values or mission or vision, and they get to that place where it is big, sometimes to the tune of 7 and multiple 7 figures,
Mm,
it is so overwhelmingly high pressure because you have so much on the line. Audience, team, clients, there's so much that's been integrated off this flawed belief system that to undo it, there's a lot of domino that has to happen. And it breaks people because they want the relief almost immediately. But then
mm.
the domino, obviously, we kind of spoke to and nodded to earlier of collateral damage. There is damage to so many people involved. So I'm curious for you, like when someone ends up in that place and like, okay, I maybe did have my head down, or I felt like I was kind of just like doing, doing, doing and go, go, go.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't check in along the way to see if it
Mhm.
met some of those markers. Where do they start when it comes to starting to realign? Like, are you of the mindset of small change over time? Are you like rip the band aid, live the life you want? Like, what should people do if they feel the need for that change, but it feels overwhelming because their business has scaled based on it?
Yeah. So I am all about, I would say, smart. So I use smart in a lot of my language. It's not fast, it's not slow, it's just smart for you. There are some people
Mm,
who do need the rip the band-aid off effect, and you know who you are. You
yeah.
know that if you take too long, you're not going to do it, or you're going to like your brain's going to overthink, right? You're going to figure
Yeah.
out all the ways that this won't work, right? And
Yeah.
then you have some people where like fast is scary, and it's so scary that it'll cause you to kind of go into this like virtual hole, if you will. And so for me, when I think about it with like the approach, it's just be smart with it. Know your financial situation, right? Obviously, if you scaled and depending on your finances and how you saved and all these other facets, you need context. Are you prepared to rip the band-aid off financially? Well, if not, then let's do a slow and steady wins the race here.
Mm,
And if that's you, identify what's most pertinent to change. There's always one or two. It's not three. There's one or two very specific things that you can do to
yeah.
give you instant relief. So if you're looking for instant relief doesn't always mean 100% of everything being done. Let's also say that.
Mm,
Sometimes you could get instant relief by just taking one of the top, I don't know, 5 things that you would love to see differently about your business or changed in your life and focus on them, and that thing can provide an insane amount of relief, right? I take
mm,
myself, for example, last year at the top of the year, I really felt like I had gotten myself to a place to where I just wasn't moving intentionally enough. Not just working out, but just like moving my body and getting out of my office, right? My office is not at my home. And I purposely don't work at my home because I know myself, I'll just be in there all the time. But I need to move. And so I started doing every single day, I have to do a wealthy wellness walk, right? So I named it and I call it 30 minutes at least a day. And I just go for a walk wherever I am, neighborhood, park, doesn't matter, right?
mm,
And for me, that was important. And it took off this weight, like I just wasn't able to be as creative and as innovative as I needed to be, not for my clients, but for myself,
mm.
for my own business, for my own vision and mission. And so that for me, it was a small thing because there were a lot of other things that changed last year. That was the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the starting place. And so that's how I would approach it. It's be smart about what you need to do. Do you need to rip off the band-aid and can you handle that? Are you at that place? Or is it I need a slow and steady? No matter
Mm.
what they are, identify the one to two primary things that you know could provide you immediate relief and start moving from there.
Yeah, I remember saying to a mentor that I just at a time in my business, I was like, everything just feels hard. Like everything I go to do right now just feels like hard. And I remember the question he asked me, he said, "Well, what if it could be easy? What would that look like?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "First of all, shut up. Second of all," and then I went into thinking about what would that look like.
Yeah.
And when I started to think what would it look like if it was easy, to your point of the 1 to 2 things, they're like, "Well, I just wouldn't wanna do X anymore." And he's like, "'Kay, great. Done.
Yeah.
Make that change." And it was something that I think we're so to the point of that self-created prison, we're so in this box of how it's always been, or we've always operated this way, or we've always marketed this way, or run the day this way, that we
Yeah.
don't really consider another alternative. And for me, it was simple things when I was feeling like pushed at all sides.
Yeah.
I realized that my work had started to kind of like slowly seep into weekends. And so I would just like quick little thing on the Saturday, but then it ended up being 4 hours, and then quick thing on the Sunday morning that was 3 hours. And I was, like, working on the weekends, it feels like I get no mental break at all from the
Mhm.
conversations and the kind of, like, being in tune with work, so that was a change. And I think the other thing too was this aspect of, like, I felt sometimes, like, when I was having, for example, one-on-one calls in any of the buckets where we offer it, it felt repetitive. I was like, "I feel like I'm having the same conversation over and over and over again." Like, it just feels like even though I have what I deem to be a scalable business, why do I feel like I'm having the same like, it's like the Truman Show every day?
Yeah.
And when I started to really lean into restructuring how we did the programs and the framing and the onboarding of how to use each of the resources, my Slack time that I spent in there was, like, basically chopped 2/3 of it out, and resources completely removed all of that issue of the ongoing conversations we were having. But you sometimes are so in the weeds
Yeah.
and the routine, to be honest, of how it's always been done, that unless you sometimes have either, in my opinion, a very stern mentor who gives you a good check that kind of puts you back into line like yourself.
Yeah.
Unless you have somebody to do that for you, or you have a situation that does it for you, sometimes you don't pop up enough to even have that evaluation, which is why I think even some of the things
Mhm.
you're talking about today are a good almost like self-assessment for people to say, "Hey, am I in tune here? And, like, is my business checking these boxes that I say matter to me?" So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, do you have questions people should ask or things that they could consider that would almost be, in your opinion, like the way that they might self-assess to say, like, okay, you're in flow of business right now, you're in
Mm.
routine, you're in your schedule. This is gonna be your Tomasha pulse check to see if you're on track. And if not, it means we have an opportunity of work to do.
Yeah, I would say it's like a value in the business and something I constantly tell clients to do because I like for self assessment to be easy. So I want you to think of
Mm,
us having a conversation on your own, and it needs to just be a very straightforward statement. And here's what I tell clients: you decide or you drown. So the area that we're looking at, you ask yourself, like, am I drowning here?
mm,
If you say yes, make a decision. Take decisive action. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't overthink it. Like you said earlier, you were like, how could business be easier? Okay, we'll just do that, right? So when you look at the areas of your business, whether it's in your finances, it's in your programming, it's your offer structure, it is your schedule, it's your time off, it is, your the number of people on your team, whatever that is, you
mm,
look at those areas and when it comes to your finances in the business and how things are going, do you feel like you're drowning? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, well, let's make some decisions when it comes to your team and the number of people that are on it or how they're working, their performance, their productivity. Are you happy with it? Are they above board? Do you feel like they're drowning? Do you feel like the business is drowning in this area? Yes or no? So it's always a decide, don't drown. That's as simple as I can
mm,
make it. When you look at that area, you look at that specific topic, do you feel like you're drowning? And those areas are so easy to call out. And so
mm.
instead of you trying to turn this into some like very elaborate assessment, and I want to ask you
Yeah,
10 questions,
yeah.
it's very simple. Where do you feel like you're drowning?
Mm.
You know that. You don't
What's an
need.
example of that? Maybe I'm thinking in the sense of the one I hear the most, in the sense of like the trigger that goes off the most is in offers.
Oh, yeah. I would say drowning in offers is normally, I would say it's like the root. And if it's not just the offers, it's the structure of the business.
Mm,
Right. And so when you think about like an offer, I've seen people, I know we've seen it over the last few years where like people had built these programs, these like, especially when we think about like the masterminds that were just so full of things. I mean, we got 10 coaches inside of here. They're coaching on like, I'm supposed to be coming here to learn about just like how to sell. I got ads in here. I got branding in here. I got a website person, an SEO person, X, Y, and Z. Not and the leader not thinking like, oh, great, it's going to be a one-stop shop, but also you've
Mhm.
turned yourself into a
Mhm.
one-stop shop with
Right.
10 different coaches that you
Yep.
now have to lead and train and be responsible for full, right? And so that's an example of what that looks like when you say like, oh, in your offer, does your offer just feel like it's suffocating you?
Mm.
For you to scale it the way that you did it, do you feel suffocated? It's like, yeah, more
Yeah.
money, more clients, but more stress.
Yeah. And
Do you
also,
find
do you want more clients?
well, and man, like don't even get me started on that. Let's go
You
there.
know.
For me, I love a concierge modeled coaching business.
Mm.
I have other
Mhm.
desires outside of coaching, right? Specifically. And I was very honest about that and upfront with myself. I also never saw myself being a CEO. So the fact that I am a CEO of this business is also different. This is probably the
Yeah.
only one that I'd ever want to be a full time CEO of, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And so knowing that about myself, I'm really clear. I don't desire to have 100 people inside of a program. I just
Mhm.
don't. And it's just not like my way. And so I remember the times where I tried those things in the past because that's what someone suggested to me. And it was the most miserable season of business.
Mhm.
People were still getting results. And I think this is also a good point for us to make. Your clients can be happy and getting results, and you can be miserable, and that is not okay.
Yeah.
Let's like, please get that. That's not okay, right? The goal is to be rich from your results,
Yeah.
not rushed, not feeling like you don't have anything left to give. And so that's what I mean by looking at it from that perspective.
I think that the aspect to the more clients thing, I'm so happy that you said that because I think there is a narrative in business that more is better. And there's
Mm,
this belief that the vision is always you need to have tons of clients, tons of money, tons of offers, lots of marketing. It's always more. There's
mhm,
always more to do, more to be, more to have.
yeah.
And even for me, and I've talked about this a couple times on here, but I when I was going into business coaching, the cardinal sin of business coaching was one-on-one. You're trading
Oh
your
yeah.
time for money. And I'm like, "Oh shoot, can't do that." So I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, great. Masterminds and do I need a course and should I do this and should I do that?" And I tried to think of all these things that I could do and like you have to remove yourself. You can't be in the weeds with your clients. That's like a very delegatable task. You shouldn't be doing it.
Accountability is everything.
Oh my gosh. And so I had all this messaging of like, it's the wrong way as a business coach. And I felt so much shame around it because I loved it.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you can't have one-on-one clients. And again, back to vision, when I started to look at, I went to a conference and I realized in that moment, I really didn't like the way my business was growing and scaling, even though to your point, it was getting great results. So I remember kind of sitting with someone and talking through it. And I was like, I just like VIP days where I sit down and I'm like in the weeds of their business, or I like to like meet their team and get like a real assessment of how the CEO is actually operating and then work with the team and the individual and like bring them together. And all of it I couldn't see without doing one-on-one work.
Yeah.
So to have it be, "Oh, that's not the right way," I also wanted to ask because I'm sure you have an opinion on this around this idea of the right way. And we talked about today
Mhm.
values and vision. And I think especially as business consultants, people feel this kind of contradicting energy because people feel like you're telling me to do it my way.
Mm,
But if you're saying do it my way, then why do I hire you if you're going to teach me your ways? So like where that balance is between it. And
mm,
for you to know, I'm definitely very anti blueprint. Like I don't believe that there's one way of doing business and anyone who sells it is just to be transparent and direct, lazy and wanting to make easy money.
agreed.
So, I think on that note, what do you see as a way for someone to kind of take all of this and to put a bow on it, to be able to integrate this in a way that feels good for them, all the while having business success? Because I think sometimes when we're in this place of like deeply desiring someone give me an answer, somebody
Yeah.
tell me the aha moment I need to know or the strategy to do or the offer I need to have. And then maybe you're coming in and you're like, I don't know my vision. I don't know my values. It can kind of feel like you're like castaway floating about and you're trying to figure out how do I get to shore here? What do you recommend for someone who kind of feels like they are trying to figure out how to succeed, but yet don't know how to do so unless they take someone else's insight? But that might mean they're ignoring their own.
Mm. I think that this is such a good question, by the way, because there is a difference between you testing and trialing and totally duplicating something. And I want
Mm,
people to give themselves permission to test as much as possible, trial as much as possible, right? When I said earlier, I mentioned that I tried going after the really bigger group coaching programs where I had a lot of people in them and a lot of people in offer at XYZ. And I just found that I didn't enjoy it. But if I had not tried it, it would be in the back of my head of, well, I could have been successful had I done X, Y, and Z. Business could look different for me had I not tried it. And so I'm all for testing and
mm,
go into the testing with an open mind and write down the things that you don't like, right? Like when I think about this, business is very much the journey of business and finding your way. It's like buying a house. Everyone knows what they want, but very few people have a list of what their non-negotiables are when they walk in. I love the countertops
mm.
and I love the spacious room and look at the open concept kitchen.
Yeah.
But is that the neighborhood that you wanted in? Does it have the backyard that you were looking for? Right? Like, is the tile exactly what you were thinking? Does it have the number of bathrooms? Like, thinking about those things, where is the master bedroom? Is it with all the other rooms or is it off to
Yeah.
itself, right? Like, those
Yeah.
small things where it's like you could get distracted by the countertops, right? Like, I saw
Mm,
people get distracted by all the talk about group is the only way to scale, and people get distracted by the only way that you're gonna be able to build a luxury business by having luxury branding, right? Or, like,
mhm,
whatever that is.
mhm,
Be open to testing, but keep notes of what you absolutely don't enjoy.
mm,
What makes you feel suffocated, what makes you feel tight, and what makes you feel burnt out, right? And then also be really clear about what brought you joy. Highlight
mhm,
those things. And from there, you can start to, when you have that catalog and that list of those things, you can utilize those as data to build something that
mm,
really aligns with who you are. But you got to first not only know what you want, you got to know what you don't want. And that's
mm.
often the missing piece. And the only way you're going to know what you don't want is by testing and trialing.
And I think also that criteria that you just noted, I think just to also share with everyone is also a great way to pick a mentor.
Mm,
Because for me, like a non-negotiable for someone that I work with is like you have to be heart-centered. I don't need you to be woo-woo, like again, no shade to it, but I don't need you to be super on the other side of the spectrum.
yeah,
But I do need you to like just be and I feel core in my heart, you're a good human. You really care. You
yeah,
want to add value. You want to help people. It's not about the number. And again, even with people who have big numbers, like if I hired someone who's doing 10 million a year, that's amazing. And I want to feel like you really care about people.
yeah,
And so I think when someone's hiring a mentor, also asking those questions, which is like, what are those non negotiable values, which is why those values are so important. What are the non-negotiable values almost in a way that you'd hire a team member that
yeah.
you could use for a mentor? Because I've also
Mm,
found that when and listen, all of us consume marketing. I'm just as easily like intrigued as the next person who scrolls
yeah,
on social media. I'm like, that's a big number. How they do that?
yeah,
All of us are intrigued, but I also, when I put it through the compass of values, that's why often at times, if I'm going to be really honest, it's been hard for me to find a coach
yeah,
because I've had maybe like a handful, like under 5 in my entire career,
yeah.
and I've been
Same.
with many of them for a long time,
Yeah,
and that's because if I go I haven't found anywhere else to go because when I cross-reference it with the values that I care about, they don't embody it, to your earlier point starting
right.
today.
Hmm.
And I also see it with mentors who talk about it, but don't do it. I really care about people and it's really about serving people. Oh, but also, like, if you're not ready to pay in full, don't waste my time. And I'm like, wait a second, what's happening here? So, like, it's that assessment. I just want to echo for anyone who just listened to what Tamasha said. It's really important too to cross reference that not only for your business strategy, but also for the person who's providing it to you. Because if you go and you get insight from the person who also doesn't align with the values that you have, do not be shocked when you're 30 to 60 days inside of that commitment, whatever container it is, and you're
Yeah.
like, this kind of feels like it's a little bit gross. Yeah, because you were so, again, similar to the way you might be looking at your business,
Yeah.
so pulled by the numbers. They're making this much money or they have this many clients. And you're
Mhm.
like, that's what I want to have. If you don't have other understanding or underbelly of the reason you build your business, you also hire people based off that. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to add that because I think it's such a critical aspect to not make the mistake of making massive, impactful investments.
I think you hit it dead on because in the beginning of my journey, obviously I came from corporate. And so corporate, I was dealing with millions. Like I
Mm,
was managing hundreds of millions of dollars in annual budgets across, 3 to 5 cost centers at a time. And so me dealing with numbers was nothing. Like I was used to it. But coming here into the
mhm.
space, it was like if you hadn't made this amount of money, you weren't sharing the screenshots, people wouldn't take you seriously. And, you know, to your point, yes, to find a mentor, but I also say for those of you that are looking for clients, be mindful of those clients as well,
Yes.
right? Like I know,
Yes.
and I'm very clear that I do not want to work with people who are driven strictly by certain things. So there's certain stuff I don't do in my marketing. I don't share screenshots of my income in my marketing. I don't even talk about how much money I make in my marketing. Does that make it tougher for me? Absolutely. I'm always
Same.
honest about that. It
Yep.
makes it harder.
Yep.
I don't talk about those things. However, I rarely get a client that is out of alignment. I rarely get a client that is not happy with me. And before I even made six figures, I was helping people make seven, right?
Mhm.
And I say this stuff out loud for the people who maybe are on that journey, right? To their first multiple six, seven figures, or wherever that number is for you.
Yeah.
Be mindful as well about the clients that you're attracting by what you are doing and what you're embodying. Don't be shocked when you get the clients who are hard pressed and only worried about revenue when all you did was sell to them using it,
Mm.
right?
100%.
Because all of a sudden you want to be humanized when they don't reach their results, but all you never humanized yourself,
Mhm.
right? So
I
just
see
something
it
to think about.
all the time. People are like, "It's so crazy. People want to just get these results effortlessly." I said, "Here's a video from your social media saying the results are basically effortless once you have our strategy." And I was like, and now she's using the word back on you. Shocker, right? Like it's not, this is your training the people. You literally in your embodiment are deciding
Mm,
who is a magnet for your message.
yeah,
So there's so many areas. I think, today, obviously talking about getting clarity of those aspects, but also how that impacts who you hire on your team. It impacts who you
mm,
hire and not having clarity of this in hiring a mentor. It attracts the kind of clients you're going to have. And it also just designs the kind of business you're going to end up with
yeah,
and also impacts the life you're going to have. Because at the root of this, it's really about, to Tamasha's point earlier, I love that word. It's about clarity and it's about having the clarity of the pieces that matter so that the domino and all these other areas can be shaped from that. Because also on the other side, if you lack that clarity, it dominoes into all those in a negative way.
yeah.
So, so good. Like genuine Tamasha masterclass. Now you guys know why I'm obsessed with her lives, okay? Like just so good. Tamasha, we ask every single guest who comes on, and I'll give you a minute to kind of think of something that comes through for you. And we ask for a nugget of wisdom. And it doesn't have to be about our topic today of leadership and of values and vision. It doesn't need to be in this bucket, but just obviously you are a very successful female CEO. You've been in business for years. You've worked with a lot of different business owners. And I'm curious if there's a nugget, a phrase, a lesson, a situation that you feel kind of has shaped your perspective of why you feel you've been able to be successful or why you feel that you've been able to help other people to see success as well.
Oh, this is good. I feel like so many things just like flooded my brain. I'd say move like you deserve it because you do. That's something that I say to myself almost daily. And it's a reminder for me that, in everything that we're doing, whether it's me working on my business or working with clients or, maybe, applying or, going after different opportunities, I'm not waiting for permission. You're not waiting for permission, right? You're not playing small. Act like the CEO that you are. Act like the woman that you are. And really shift yourself out of this becoming mindset. Yes, we're becoming something every single day, but today, be who it is that you know you need to be. That's my
Mm.
nugget for you all. No more becoming, being.
And I have one quick question as a follow-up to that because I already know the kind of audience member that I have. What if you don't believe it
Mm, if you don't believe it,
yet? I should add comma yet.
mm, if you don't believe it yet, do it anyway. One thing that I tell clients every single time we talk about belief is that it doesn't need to make sense to make success.
Mm, I
Too
love that.
often we want things to make sense. And
Mm,
on your journey of becoming and growing into something bigger, you're going to have a lot that you don't understand that you've never encountered before. What we do here in business to say that we are online and we're able to impact through these screens and we're impacting through a podcast right now, merely with people hearing our voices and not being in a room with us, that doesn't make logical sense to most
mm,
people, but it does make change. It does cause shifts and it does bring us success. And so stop waiting for something to make sense for you to believe it. Just
mm.
decide to believe it.
I feel like the only thing I would just to add to what she said is to basically act without evidence.
Mm,
And I love that because I feel like there's an aspect of early entrepreneurship, you're kinda crazy. You've got no evidence to do what you're doing in the sense of, like, for you or for me or for anybody, you're kind of just going in blind. And there's this deep trust, I think, less in the identity of, like, I'm gonna be this person or make this much money. There's not as much confidence in that because we just don't know. We don't have the evidence to say.
yeah.
But I think there's this aspect of, like, trusting yourself and leaning into the trust of who you are, which is it's so perfectly connected to today's message because I think when you know who you are, what you want, what you stand for, and that really is the core of everything that you decide to do, your life will basically be shaped around that. So, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. All right, Tamasha, if somebody like, obviously you guys understand why I'm obsessed with her content and just hearing her speak in general. If someone wants to also co-watch your lives with me or consume any of your other stuff, where's the best place for them to connect with you and to reach out?
Yeah, so the best place for you to connect with me is going to be on Instagram. That is my home. I love it there in terms of social platforms. Obviously, you can always go to my website, tomashasuber.com, and hang out with me on my email list, but Instagram is the place to be. It's a party over there.
It is a party. Honestly, please go. Like, please go watch her live. It's like genuinely, I'll be doing makeup or like making food prep and I'll just watch her go. And it's the best thing. It's so good. It's like a private podcast basically with Tamasha.
Yeah.
All of that to say, Tamasha, thank you so much for coming on. This was so good. This was genuinely a masterclass in all things like personal and also team and business leadership. It was so good.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, and I know that the ambitious people are going to love it.
For sure, for sure. She's got all the notes now and now she needs to go do. And so I would say the other thing, which also was a quote that one of our past guests, George, had mentioned, which was not letting things be shelf help and basically allowing today to just be something that was like, wow, that was really insightful. And then ending this episode and letting it stay here. So I want to encourage you, the things that Tamasha shared today, these are things that people spend some big bucks to work with her to do. And you got a nugget and the surface of some of the things that you would get inside of obviously coaching. And so use that as a stepping stone toward getting a little bit of momentum. Maybe outline what is my mission, getting clarity of your vision for your business and life, outlining your values. I want to invite you to take some action on this today. And maybe even honestly, which both of us love, slide into our DMs, send Tamasha a message and say, maybe this was the aspect that downloaded for you. Maybe you had an aha moment around vision or around mission. And any of those insights are always good. We always talk about being witnessed in transformation on every episode. And so if you're having an aha moment, the best thing you can do is be witnessed in it. So go be witnessed by messaging Tamasha or myself. We'd love to hear from you and kind of hear what downloaded for you. And with all of that being said, we will see you next week. And as always, stay ambitious.